Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Steven Pinker's How the Mind Works.
Yeah.
We've got some excerpts from the audiobook ready to go, and we're going to be talking all about the evolution of the human mind and really kind of get into some interesting stuff. Starting intelligence, emotions, consciousness.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, the whole shebang.
It's more than just theory, though. What makes Pinker so fascinating is how he takes evolutionary biology and uses that lens to look at everything.
Okay.
From why we believe what we do to the essence of consciousness itself.
Okay, so let's start with something that I think a lot of people kind of struggle with. This idea that the human mind is somehow exempt from evolution.
Right.
Is that really a myth, like Pinker says?
It really is. Think about it this way. The human eye
Right.
is this unbelievably intricate structure.
Right.
The optics, the way the retina processes light, it's a masterpiece of natural selection. But all that information has to go somewhere. It feeds into the brain, which must be just as complex to make sense of it all.
So the brain isn't just like a passive receiver of information.
Right.
It's actively shaping and interpreting everything.
Absolutely. And just like the eye, the brain's structure, its functions, all products of evolution. Everything about it is honed to solve problems and make sure we survive, just like all of our ancestors did.
So that really challenges, I think, this kind of misconception that a lot of people have of separating the mind and the body.
Yeah.
As if like the mind is somehow separate from the physical world and the laws of the physical world.
Exactly. You can't divorce the mind from the body or from the evolutionary forces that shaped them both. They're inextricably linked.
Okay, so Pinker talks about this concept of reverse engineering the mind. Can you break that down a little bit for me?
Sure. Think about pregnancy sickness.
Okay.
Often dismissed as just a side effect, a hormonal side effect.
Right.
But Pinker suggests that it's actually an adaptation with an evolutionary benefit.
I've never thought about pregnancy sickness that way. What's the benefit?
Well, in those crucial early stages of development, pregnancy sickness actually protects the fetus from toxins found in certain foods.
Wow. So it's like a built-in defense mechanism.
Exactly.
That's incredible. It does seem kind of counterintuitive at first glance.
Yeah, and that's why a solid evolutionary explanation can't just be a convenient story. It has to explain the problem the adaptation solves.
Right. So how does this all tie into the concept of selfish genes? Because I think that that's another concept that gets,
Misunderstood.
very misunderstood.
It's really easy to misunderstand, like, oh, we're all inherently selfish. But Pinker argues that our genes selfishly drive us towards things that increase our survival and chances of reproduction.
Okay.
Things like health friendships, having children. They build brains that enjoy those things.
So even if we're not consciously thinking about passing on our genes, our deepest desires are actually aligned with our survival.
In a way, yes, it's a fascinating paradox. Our goals, like falling in love or raising a family, are perfectly aligned with our genes' selfish goal of replication.
But wouldn't that imply that even like acts of altruism,
Right.
of selflessness, are ultimately selfish?
It is, but remember, genes can also benefit by promoting cooperation and altruism, especially towards kin.
Okay.
A gene that makes you help your siblings, for example, is indirectly helping copies of itself in those siblings survive and reproduce.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not so much about individual selfishness, but more about like what benefits the genes in the long run.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this brings us to consciousness, which Pinker explores in depth. He tackles these different facets of consciousness. Access consciousness,
Okay.
which is our awareness of information,
Okay.
and sentience, which is the actual subjective experience of feeling.
So access consciousness is kind of like knowing something.
Yes.
And then sentience is like feeling something.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good way to put it. But even with these distinctions, the question of sentience remains one of the biggest mysteries in science and philosophy.
Yeah. And Pinker, he doesn't shy away from asking those big questions.
No, he doesn't.
Does he? He even brings up like thought experiments.
Yeah.
Like simulated minds
Yeah.
or a brain in a vat.
He does. And he even examines cases like blind sight, where people can react to things they see even though they claim to be blind.
Wait, how's that possible? If they're blind, how can they react to what they see?
That's the intriguing part. Blind sight suggests there might be pathways in the brain that allow for visual processing without conscious awareness.
Wow.
It challenges our assumptions about the relationship between perception and consciousness.
That's mind-boggling. It seems like every answer just leads to more questions.
That's the beauty of exploring the human mind. There's always another layer to uncover.
Speaking of layers, Pinker dismantles this common notion of like a linear intelligence scale
Right.
Yeah.
in the animal kingdom. You know, the whole
Yeah.
humans at the top of the ladder thing.
Right. That's a very human-centric way of looking at things. Pinker argues that different species have evolved their own unique cognitive abilities, each incredibly intelligent in their own ecological niche.
So it's not about more intelligent or less intelligent, but rather different kinds of intelligence.
Exactly. Think about the desert ant, for example.
Okay.
They have this incredible navigation system using a kind of internal dead reckoning to find their way back to their nest over vast distances.
It's amazing. And like some birds use the sun's position, what's called the ephemeris function,
Yeah.
to navigate.
Right.
And even like our most advanced computers struggle to replicate these abilities.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's incredible.
Each species has its own brand of genius perfectly adapted to their specific needs.
I love that. So how does Pinker explain what makes human intelligence unique then?
He introduces the concept of the cognitive niche, arguing that humans have evolved to be general problem solvers. We rely on tools, language, and social cooperation to survive and thrive in a wide range of environments.
So it's not just about raw brain power.
Right.
It's about how we use our intelligence in a flexible and innovative way.
Precisely. It's our ability to adapt, learn, and collaborate that truly sets us apart.
Okay, so we've covered evolution, consciousness, intelligence. Where do we go from here?
Well, next we can delve into something equally fascinating, the power of metaphor.
Okay.
Pinker argues that even our most abstract thoughts are often grounded in spatial and physical reasoning.
Really, can you give me an example?
Think about how children naturally use spatial metaphors to express abstract ideas.
Okay.
A child might say, I'm putting part of the sleeve blue, while coloring, even though putting something blue is a physical action, not an abstract one.
That's a great example. It's like their minds are using concrete actions
Yeah.
to understand these abstract concepts.
Exactly. And it's not just children. We all use conceptual metaphors in everyday language without even realizing it.
Right.
Saying, I'm feeling down when we're sad, or he's at the peak of his career to describe success.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. So it's like our minds are constantly using metaphors
Yeah.
to make sense of the world around us.
It suggests that even our most complex, abstract thoughts are ultimately rooted in our understanding of the physical world.
So you're saying that our understanding of things like love or morality or even time
Yes,
are all based on these physical experiences.
that's what Pinker suggests. Our minds seem to take these concrete physical concepts and use them as building blocks for understanding more abstract ideas.
So like our brains are creating this amazing tapestry of thought,
Yeah,
weaving together the physical and the abstract in ways that we don't even realize.
exactly. And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of the human mind, emotions.
Okay.
Pinker challenges the romantic notion that emotions are simply irrational impulses from our animal past.
Right, because that comes up all the time, right?
Yeah.
This idea that emotions are these uncontrollable forces that we need to like suppress
Yeah.
or overcome.
Yes. But Pinker argues that emotions are not irrational.
Okay.
They are sophisticated adaptations designed to solve specific problems,
Yeah.
especially in our social lives.
So instead of seeing them as something to be controlled, we should see them as tools.
Exactly. Each emotion serves a purpose. Fear alerts us to danger.
Right.
Disgust helps us avoid things that might make us sick. Anger motivates us to defend ourselves.
And love, of course, plays a crucial role in like
Yeah.
forming bonds
That's
and
just sex.
creating social connections.
Even emotions that seem irrational, like jealousy or shame, can be understood as having a function in social dynamics, helping us navigate complex relationships and social hierarchies.
So they're not just random feelings.
Right.
They're part of this like intricate system
Right.
that evolved to help us navigate the social world.
Exactly. And they play a crucial role in how we make decisions and interact with others,
Right.
even in seemingly irrational ways.
This is all so fascinating, but it also makes me wonder about like the line between rationality and emotion.
Yeah.
Because it seems like they're constantly influencing each other.
You're absolutely right, and that's a key point that Pinker explores. He argues that our emotions can be both rational and seemingly irrational depending on the context.
So it's like emotions are this other form of intelligence.
Yeah.
This way of responding to the world that's just as complex and nuanced as our rational thoughts.
Exactly. And that complexity is what makes studying the human mind so endlessly fascinating.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Evolution, consciousness, intelligence,
Right.
the power of metaphor, and the complex world of emotions. Where do we go from here?
Well, in part two of our deep dive, we'll explore how all of these concepts come together in Pinker's examination of beliefs, particularly religious and supernatural beliefs.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm eager to hear what Pinker has to say about like how our minds create
Yeah.
and interpret these beliefs,
Yeah.
especially from like an evolutionary perspective.
It's a thought-provoking exploration for
Hmm.
sure. We'll delve into the cognitive mechanisms that underpin these beliefs and the adaptive functions they may have served throughout human history.
I can't wait to unpack all of that. But for now, let's take a break. We'll be back soon with part two of our deep dive into how the mind works. Welcome back. Still kind of processing everything from that last segment.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
The human mind is a pretty wild place.
It certainly is, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Okay, so in the last segment, we talked about how our minds are these products of evolution shaped by the need to survive and make sense of the world.
Hmm.
But how does that actually play out in our daily lives?
Right.
How do our minds actually process all this information that's constantly bombarding us?
Well, Pinker gets into this by exploring what he calls intuitive theories or modules. These are like specialized mental tools that we use to organize and understand our experiences.
So we don't just passively take in information.
Right.
We're actively like sorting and categorizing it.
Exactly. We have modules for objects, for living things, for tools and artifacts, even for other minds.
That's fascinating. So it's like our brains come preloaded with a set of assumptions about how the world works.
You could say that. These modules are shaped by the challenges our ancestors faced, the problems they needed to solve to survive.
Okay, that makes sense. Could you give me an example of like one of these modules in action?
Sure. Take our intuitive physics, for example.
Okay.
We seem to have this built-in understanding of how objects behave in the physical world.
Like knowing that things fall down, not up,
Yeah,
or that a solid object can't pass through another solid object?
precisely. And what's interesting is that even babies demonstrate a grasp of these concepts, suggesting that they are not simply learned from experience.
So it's like we have this basic physics engine in our heads from the get-go.
In a way, yes. Of course, our intuitive physics isn't perfect. It's based on the laws of motion that apply to the objects we typically encounter in our everyday lives.
Which is why we get fooled by optical illusions.
Right.
Or why things like magnets seem so bizarre to us at first.
Exactly, but for the most part, this intuitive understanding serves us incredibly well. It allows us to navigate the physical world, interact with objects, and make predictions about how things will behave.
Okay, that makes sense. What about other modules? You mentioned one for living things.
Right. Pinker argues that we also have an intuitive biology, a way of understanding living things that goes beyond simply categorizing them.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we seem to instinctively see living things as having an essence, something that makes them what they are, regardless of their outward appearance.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about how we understand species. We know that a lion raised by cows will still grow up to be a lion.
Right.
It won't moo or graze on grass.
That's true. We understand that there's something fundamental about a lion's nature that makes it a lion no matter how it's raised.
Exactly. And this essentialist thinking, as Pinker calls it, is part of what makes us such good natural historians. We can classify organisms, understand their behaviors, and even use them for our own purposes.
Like using plants for food or medicine.
Precisely. But like, our intuitive physics or intuitive biology isn't always perfectly aligned with scientific reality.
Right.
It can lead to misconceptions such as the belief that species are fixed and unchanging.
So it's a powerful tool, but one that needs to be used carefully in conjunction with scientific knowledge.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the strengths and limitations of our intuitive theories.
Okay, so we have modules for physics for living things. What about the human-made world? How do we make sense of tools and artifacts?
Well, Pinker argues that we have a specific module for understanding artifacts, things that are created for specific purposes.
So it's different from how we understand natural objects.
Yes. Unlike a rock or a tree, an artifact's essence is defined by its function. A chair is a chair because it's designed for sitting, not because of any inherent chairness.
I see. So we understand a hammer is for hitting things, not for eating because of its intended purpose.
Exactly, and we can even infer the purpose of unfamiliar artifacts based on their design, even if we've never seen them before.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like our brains are constantly trying to figure out, what is this thing for?
And this ability to understand and create artifacts is a key part of what makes humans unique. It's the foundation for our technology, our art, and our culture.
Okay, so we have these modules for the physical world, for living things, and for human-made objects. But what about other people? How
right?
do we make sense of other minds?
This is where things get really interesting. Pinker argues that we have a built-in theory of mind, a module specifically designed to understand that other people have beliefs, desires, and intentions.
So it's like we have this innate ability to step into someone else's shoes and see the world from their perspective.
In a way, yes, this ability allows us to predict what others will do, explain their actions, and even deceive them if we're so inclined.
That's incredible, but how does this theory of mind actually develop?
Well, Pinker cites studies showing that even young children demonstrate an understanding of false beliefs.
Okay.
They recognize that someone else can have a belief that is different from reality.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about the classic experiment where a child sees a candy box that actually contains pencils.
Okay.
The child understands that someone who hasn't seen inside the box will falsely believe that it contains candy.
That's a great example. It shows that even at a young age, we're already starting to grasp the idea that other people have their own internal worlds, their own beliefs and perceptions.
Exactly. And this ability to understand other minds is absolutely essential for navigating the social world.
Right.
It allows us to cooperate, compete, and build relationships.
It's like the foundation of all social interaction.
Exactly.
Without it, we'd be completely lost.
Precisely. And Pinker even suggests that our understanding of other minds might be an extension of our understanding of physical objects.
So just like we can reason about the forces that act on objects, we can reason about the beliefs and desires that motivate people.
It's like our minds are using similar computational tools, but applying them to different domains.
That's a fascinating idea. It connects back to the idea of these modules being adaptable and flexible, capable of handling a wide range of information.
Exactly. And this leads us back to our discussion of emotions, which play a crucial role in how our theory of mind operates.
Okay, I can see how emotions would be important in social interactions, but how do they tie into our understanding of other minds?
Well, remember, Pinker argues that emotions aren't just irrational impulses. They're sophisticated tools designed to solve problems, particularly in our social lives.
Right, so they're not just about how we feel, but also about how we communicate and interact with others.
Exactly. Our emotions help us signal our intentions, build trust, and navigate the complexities of social relationships.
Can you give me some examples of how specific emotions play out in social interactions?
Sure. Take fear, for example. It's not just about feeling scared.
Right.
You can also signal submission or a desire to avoid conflict.
That makes sense. And anger could be a way of signaling that our boundaries have been crossed.
Precisely. It can act as a deterrent, preventing others from taking advantage of us.
Okay.
On the other hand, emotions like love and gratitude can signal our willingness to cooperate and reciprocate.
So it's like we're constantly sending and receiving these emotional signals, shaping our interactions with others in subtle and complex ways.
Exactly. And Pinker even brings in the concept of game theory to explain how our emotions function in these strategic interactions.
Game theory, like the prisoner's dilemma and all that.
Exactly. Game theory is a way of analyzing strategic interactions between individuals where the best course of action for each person depends on what the other person does.
So it's like a mathematical way of understanding conflict and cooperation.
And Pinker argues that our emotions play a key role in these strategic calculations. He suggests that seemingly irrational behaviors like acting out in anger or making extravagant displays of affection can actually be understood as strategies for influencing others.
It's like we're all playing this elaborate game of social chess, and our emotions are the pieces.
It's a fascinating perspective, isn't it? It challenges us to think about our emotions in a whole new light.
It certainly does. It makes you realize just how complex and multifaceted the human mind really is.
And despite all this complexity, we shouldn't forget that our minds are not perfect.
Right.
We're prone to biases, errors, and even self-deception.
So even with all these amazing adaptations, our minds have their quirks.
Absolutely. Pinker attributes this to the fact that our minds evolved to solve the problems of our ancestral environment, which was vastly different from the world we live in today.
So we're walking around with Stone Age minds trying to make sense of a modern world.
In a sense, yes. And this mismatch can lead to all sorts of interesting and sometimes problematic behaviors.
Like our tendency to overeat sugary and fatty foods, even though we know they're not good for us.
Yeah.
Or our susceptibility to advertising and propaganda.
Precisely. It's a reminder that our minds, while incredibly powerful, are not infallible.
Right.
And this understanding is crucial for making more informed decisions in our modern world.
Okay, so we've explored these intuitive theories or modules, these mental tools that help us navigate the world, understand living things, interact with objects, and even make sense of other minds. Where do we go from here?
Well, next we can delve into one of the most fascinating and controversial topics Pinker tackles, the pervasiveness of religious and supernatural beliefs.
Oh, that sounds intriguing. I'm eager to hear how Pinker approaches this from an evolutionary perspective, especially considering how deeply ingrained these beliefs are in so many cultures.
It's a thought-provoking exploration, for sure. We'll uncover how our minds, even with their incredible capabilities, can be predisposed to see patterns in agency where none exist, leading to the development of supernatural explanations for the world around us.
I can't wait to delve into that. But for now, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back to explore the roots of belief and the limits of knowing in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle, I guess, one of the biggest topics in Pinker's book,
Mm-hmm.
the whole idea of beliefs, not just any beliefs, or religious and supernatural beliefs.
Right.
This is where things can get a little, I don't know, controversial.
Well, yeah, for sure. Maybe
It's a sensitive
a
area.
little sensitive.
Yeah, but it's fascinating.
So how does Pinker even approach this from a cognitive perspective? We spent the last two segments talking about how incredible our minds are.
Right.
How they're products of evolution,
Yeah.
capable of logic and reason. So why are we so drawn to believing in things that, well, can't be scientifically proven?
It's a great question. Despite our capacity for logic, our minds are also really good at seeing agency and intentionality, even where it doesn't exist.
Okay.
It's like we're wired to look for patterns and make connections, even if those connections are based on faulty assumptions.
Yeah.
So you're saying we're naturally inclined to see a hand at work, even when it's just random chance.
In a way, yes. And this tendency gets amplified when we're dealing with things we don't understand.
Okay.
Like the origins of the universe, the nature of consciousness, the experience of death. These are mysteries that have puzzled humans for millennia.
And without scientific explanations, it's almost natural to fill in those gaps with supernatural stories and myths.
Right, exactly. It's like our minds are searching for explanations, and when they can't find a natural one, they readily create a supernatural one.
So Pinker's not just saying that we come up with these beliefs to make ourselves feel better. He's actually suggesting that there's a cognitive basis for this.
That's right. He's not dismissing religious beliefs as mere superstition or delusion. He's trying to understand them as products of the way our minds work.
But Pinker doesn't just stop at explaining how these beliefs arise. He also explores their potential benefits.
Right. He points out that religious beliefs often serve important adaptive functions.
Like what?
Well, they can promote group cohesion, provide moral guidance, offer comfort and meaning in the face of uncertainty and suffering.
So even though these beliefs might not be scientifically accurate, they can still be beneficial in a social and psychological sense.
Exactly. They can help us cope with the anxieties of existence, strengthen social bonds, and create a sense of shared purpose and meaning. It's a reminder that human behavior is complex and often driven by factors that go beyond simple rationality.
It's like these beliefs, whether we consciously choose them or not, play a huge role in shaping our lives and our societies.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that Pinker isn't endorsing any particular religious beliefs. He's simply trying to understand from a scientific perspective why these beliefs are so pervasive and persistent throughout human history.
And I think that's a really valuable perspective because it helps us move beyond these simplistic arguments about belief and non-belief.
Yeah.
It allows us to see that even our most irrational seeming beliefs are rooted in the way our minds work.
Absolutely, and that understanding, I think, can lead to greater empathy and tolerance. It helps us see the human side of beliefs, even if we don't share them ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a recurring theme with Pinker, right?
Yeah.
We really need to understand our minds with all their limitations and biases if we truly want to understand ourselves and the world around us.
Totally, and that leads us to, I think, the final and perhaps most challenging part of Pinker's exploration, the limits of knowing.
Okay, so now we're getting into the deep philosophical questions.
Yeah.
Consciousness, free will,
Yeah.
the self-morality,
The biggies.
the big ones. Does he have any answers? Like a grand unified theory of everything.
Well, he doesn't claim to have all the answers, but he does offer a provocative and some might say humbling perspective.
Okay, what's that?
He suggests that some of these problems, these ultimate mysteries, might be inherently unsolvable by the human mind.
You mean there might be questions we're just not equipped to answer?
Exactly. That's what Pinker is proposing. He argues that our cognitive equipment, as sophisticated as it is, might simply not be designed to grasp these ultimate truths. It's like trying to understand the universe using only a microscope.
Like, we might be able to see incredible detail to zoom in on specific aspects of reality, but we might never be able to grasp the big picture,
Right.
the ultimate nature of things.
Precisely. And this isn't necessarily a pessimistic view. In a way, it can be quite liberating.
Liberating how so?
Well, it frees us from the burden of having to have all the answers. It encourages us to embrace the mystery, the wonder of the unknown.
Okay.
It's a call to humility.
So instead of getting bogged down in the pursuit of ultimate answers,
Mm.
we should focus on appreciating what we can know,
Yeah.
on celebrating the incredible capabilities of the human mind, even with its limitations.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of Pinker's approach.
Right.
He doesn't shy away from the big question, the mysteries that remain. He just encourages us to explore them with a sense of curiosity, wonder, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
It's like he's saying, here's all this amazing stuff we've learned about the human mind, but let's not forget that there's still so much we don't know, and that's okay.
Exactly. And perhaps in acknowledging the limits of knowing, we open ourselves up to even greater wonder and awe.
It's like he's inviting us on this grand adventure through the landscapes of our own minds, revealing the intricate mechanisms that make us who we are, while reminding us that the journey is just as important as the destination.
And it's a journey well worth taking. Pinker's How the Mind Works is a testament to the power and potential of the human mind. It's a celebration of our cognitive achievements and a call to embrace the mysteries that remain.
Well said. So if you're ready to dive headfirst into the fascinating world of the human mind, I highly recommend checking out How the Mind Works. It's a book that will challenge your assumptions, expand your understanding, and leave you with a profound appreciation for the miracle of consciousness, even as we confront the limits of knowing.
It's a journey of discovery that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into how the mind works. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep marveling at the incredible machine that is the human mind.